What's up, guys, and welcome to the Isn't It Crazy podcast. My name is Rudy Perez, and I'm your host. Today, I'll be talking about the coronavirus vaccine. I'll also be talking about Conor McGregor versus Jake Paul, and I'll give you guys a book recommendation and a show recommendation, and I'll try to do it all under 30 minutes. Before we get started, if you're listening to this on Spotify or anywhere else you get this podcast from, just know I do have a video version of the show on YouTube. Just go on there and search up the Isn't It Crazy podcast. And remember, while you're there, to like and subscribe. Okay, so vaccines have been a hot topic for a while now. You know, with the anti-vax moms saying that vaccines are dangerous because they could give your kids autism. Now it's an even hotter topic because of the coronavirus vaccine. And people on one side saying you shouldn't take it, and people on the other side saying that it's necessary to take it. And I think it's important to have these conversations because there's people with opposing views, and you could have a conversation with these people and have a healthy conversation and come to a compromise where maybe you take some of their points, they take some of your points, and you argue about where you think you guys are wrong. That's why I thought it'd be a great idea to hop on this podcast and let you guys know exactly how I feel. So if you guys disagree with anything I'm saying, you're welcome to comment below or DM me, and we can have a healthy conversation about the topic. But personally, I think vaccines are one of the greatest inventions of human history. You know, they eradicated smallpox and polio and God knows what other diseases that could have fucked us up. And me personally, coming from a third world country, it's necessary to get vaccinated. You know, these countries don't have health organizations like they do in America, China, and Europe. You know, so getting vaccinated is a necessity out there. And because of their health standards in third world countries, diseases like coronavirus and smallpox, typhus, all these deadly diseases can run rampant out there. So it's kind of a way of life out there. You get vaccinated as soon as you're born. And I don't know which vaccine it is, but it fucks up your arm, especially if you're in South America or you're Latino. You know that it's kind of an identifier when you see somebody with this little scar on your shoulder and it looks like a little round circle. It's usually an ongoing joke. You see another Latino and you know they got vaccinated. And, you know, you grow up thinking that vaccines are a necessity until you come to America and then you see people actively denying the fact that vaccines can be healthy for you. And when it comes to the coronavirus, there was only three ways this was going to end. Either we're going to get herd immunity, which would take the longest because a lot of people would have to contract the virus and a lot of people would have to die. And what happens with herd immunity is that enough people get it where the virus can't be spread easily throughout the host. So it just takes a very long time, and the death toll could be a lot bigger than it is now. And another viable solution was social distancing. You know, 6 feet apart, wear your mask, and flatten the curve of the hospital capacities. And then the people that did get it could go into a hospital that wasn't overcrowded and get taken care of and limit the death toll in America. And that seemed to help for a while in summer. You know, things were going down, but now that we're in winter and the flu season, cases went back up again. And thankfully, we got a vaccine for the coronavirus, which was the third option to ending this pandemic and the fastest option. You know, it's wild to me that the moment we get a vaccine, people are so quick to point out the flaws. And one of those biggest flaws was that they think that vaccines were rushed. And from what I learned from my research was that the way vaccines are developed, the longer it takes, it's because they were underfunded. And the more funds they have to develop a vaccine, the faster they're developed. And when you live in a supply and demand world like we do on today's day, you know, governments are eager to find a solution to the coronavirus. So the first company to come up with a viable vaccine was going to get a government's attention, and they were willing to pay a lot of money to get the solution and get their economies back up and running. So every company, top company in the world, started developing a vaccine for the coronavirus and poured billions of dollars into it. It was one of the most collective efforts in human history to find a solution to a problem, and because it affected pretty much the whole world. So to say that this vaccine was rushed and it wasn't given the proper time to develop the safety levels that people would feel comfortable with is a lie, because other vaccines just didn't have the right amount of funds to get made in the span of time that the coronavirus vaccine was made. So there's one reason why I think anti vaxxers and corona deniers are wrong, because they don't understand the dynamics and how funds can rapidly develop a vaccine if they are implemented into the trying to find a solution. And the risk of not doing your research tends to make you afraid of things. You know, when you go on social media and you see these anti vax moms who claim that vaccines were the ones that gave their kids autism. And the more you listen to these anti vax moms, you tend to see that these people are morons, because they're not basing their argument on facts. They're basing their arguments on hysteria and his like wild accusations. And it, it doesn't take a lot to sow the seed of doubt. You just have to make people wonder. Like when it comes to the corona vaccine, people are saying, well, you don't know the effects it might have. 5 years from now, you could get cancer, or it might kill you right away. And the craziest one was the government is using this vaccine to control us in some way. And if you do your research and you dive into the vaccine world, you understand and you listen to doctors and virologists and how they talk about how these vaccines were developed, you become more comfortable with the idea of getting the vaccine itself. You know, one of my biggest arguments would be the companies that are developing the vaccines are billion-dollar companies with credibility, and they are part of the stock markets. So for a company this large to not succeed on making a safety vaccine would be suicidal, because say they develop a vaccine and they cut the corners and they rushed it out and it tends to kill people or make people even sicker than just getting the coronavirus, their credibility would take a major hit. Their stock prices would take a major hit. So these guys, I would think, are double checking, triple checking the results and vetting all their research they've done into clinical trials and animal trials, and making sure that if they are going to put out a vaccine, it's not going to be detrimental to their business structure, and they're going to be able to heal people. And, you know, when you hear that their success rates are 95 to 98% safe, it should make the country more comfortable taking this vaccine, but it's not. And the biggest problem with that is if you're not taking this vaccine, it's going to take us longer to get back on our feet economically. I think if a lot of people get vaccinated, then government is more willing to open up or ease up on the lockdowns and let small businesses get back to work and let people eat in restaurants and let people consume more, I guess you could say, and everybody get back on their feet. And it's like that one kid in class that ruins it for everybody, because they're not willing to take this vaccine because they're uneducated and scared, to be frank. And the longer this takes, the more people that are going to die, the more people that are going to lose their small businesses. And I think it's a shame, because this could all be averted if we were just educated and we didn't spread this false narrative that these vaccines are not safe. Um, a lot of it is politically fueled and a lot of it is stupidity fueled. And I think that if you do your research on these vaccines and see how vaccines in history have had a positive outcome in the way we deal with these deadly diseases, then you'll be more comfortable getting and taking the vaccine. And hopefully that's the direction that America goes. I think that the people saying you shouldn't get the vaccine, well, you're not on the list as number one person that's going to get it. There's people at this moment getting the vaccine. And I suggest if you're scared or still in between, watch these people and see what happens. Do they have weird side effects? Are they dying? Or are they getting better? Or how bad is it to get the vaccine? Do you just get a fever and a bit of a cough? Or does it really fuck you up? And then make your choice once you see the results on a live human being. And hopefully I've convinced a couple people to take the vaccine. And I actually got the coronavirus, so I don't need the vaccine, but I would get it in a heartbeat. If I could schedule it and I haven't gotten it before, I would have done it myself. So we're just gonna have to wait and see where the country goes and how they implement getting vaccinated. And hopefully we get back to normal. But like I said, if you guys think I'm wrong in any way, let me know. And I would love to have a conversation about the topic. Moving on to a lighter topic, I guess you could say, Conor McGregor and Jake Paul are probably going to fight. Jake Paul is following Conor McGregor's game plan when it came to fighting Floyd Mayweather. Make a lot of noise, say a lot of disrespectful shit. And when the public interest grows, then you have a fight. And right now, if you go on either of their social medias, that's all they're talking about. Jake Paul pulled up on Dylan Dennis, which is Conor McGregor's boy, and started throwing water balloons and toilet paper. I thought it was hilarious. Now he's like following Conor McGregor's wife and Dylan Dennis's girl. And supposedly he FaceTimed her and said, like, Dylan Dennis, come get your girl. So he's doing it right. He's ruffling their feathers. The only problem I have with Jake Paul calling out real fighters is that the last two people Jake Paul ever fought one was a YouTuber and the other guy was an NBA All-Star who had no prior experience in boxing. And Jake Paul says that he has 3 years under his belt. And what happens is that he beats these two guys and now he has this false sense of confidence that he can take on an actual fighter. I think he has a better chance at beating Dylan Dennis just because his striking game is pretty much non-existent. I mean, if it was an MMA fight, Dylan Dennis would wrap him up like a anaconda and kill him. But if they're just gonna straight out box, I would say Dylan Dennis still has an edge just because he's done it for so long. But Dylan Dennis's striking isn't that convincing. But when it comes to Conor McGregor, one of the most lethal strikers in the game, come on, dude. Like, there's a reason why Jake Paul just threw water balloons and toilet paper at Dylan Dennis. And when it came to Conor, he talked about his wife. He said that there's a $50 million offer on the table. There's a reason why he's trying harder with Conor, because that that's the most impossible fight to get, especially when you have to go through Dana. And I mean, if they actually make so much noise that the public interest is just clamoring for this fight, I'll be the first to fucking buy it. I am down to get entertained and I'm a degenerate when it comes to fighting. So, I'm crossing my fingers that this actually happens because I would love to see Conor McGregor knock out Jake Paul. But most likely, he has a better chance at fighting Dylan Dennis or Henry Cejudo, who's not under the UFC contract. Either way, it's going to be it's entertaining now. The whole water balloon, toilet paper, FaceTiming Dylan Dennis's girl, calling Conor McGregor's wife a whore. It's all hilarious. This kid is doing it right, and he is stirring up and ruffling some feathers around the fight game. And as far as entertainment fights go, this one would be the top of the fucking heap and better than Conor versus Floyd, Floyd versus Jake Paul or Logan Paul. I'm excited to see what happens, but if it actually comes to fruition, I would bet the house on Conor McGregor, and I'm sure the odds would be fucking staggering. So we'll see what happens, and I will keep you guys updated on how funny I think the storyline is already. The whole calling out and Ireland being like fucking pissed off at, it's kind of hard to get a whole country to be mad at you all at once. And Jake Paul just has a knack for pissing people off, especially wearing the Irish flag and calling out one of their biggest superstars. He's doing it right. We're just going to have to see what happens when it comes to Dana actually letting this thing happen, because Conor McGregor is under the UFC banner and the contract. And it's kind of hard to convince Dana to let his best superstar go out there and have another circus fight. They did it with Floyd, and I'm sure Dana told him, "Hey, this is your one and only time. We're gonna do this. After that, don't ask me again." So to ask him again and fight a lesser boxer, kind of a hard sell. But if the money's there, if the public clamor is there, I think these boys could actually do it. But we'll have to wait and see. As far as show recommendations go, it's kind of hard to recommend shows on Netflix because due to quarantines and lockdowns, that's what everybody's been doing. They've been watching Netflix, and it's hard to tell people like, "Hey, have you seen the show?" Because automatically it's yes. I saw all 5 seasons last night, so it's like fuck. All right, but there's a show that just came out like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and it's called Big Mouth. And I will show my kids Big Mouth once they're old enough because there's shows like Family Guy that are random and funny, and then there's shows like South Park that push the boundaries, and that's what makes it interesting. And there's shows like The Simpsons, which is just entertaining, and they kind of go with the times. But Big Mouth is based on facts, and they make it hilarious. The best way to learn something is to introduce it with humor because then it sticks way better because you think it's hilarious, you're paying more attention because they teach you about hormones, they teach you about what goes on in adolescent life, how to deal with anxiety, how to deal with depression. And, it also goes into like social fabric. It shows how a black kid has to culture change in situations that he's in, whether he's talking to a white person, he has this like soft non-threatening voice, and when he's with like black people he has this like urban hip hop kind of thing, and it gives you an insight to how people and how adolescents feel as they're growing up. So I think it's a very good educational show to show your kids, because some of those conversations are hard. How to deal with a period, how to deal with masturbating or boners or anything like that. And they have this show that eases that conversation in a funny way. And you can look at your kid and be like, yeah, that's exactly how it is. Like you get wet dreams and sometimes you feel like you need to jerk off, and this is how you should deal with anxiety and your first love and depression and stuff like that. So if you guys haven't watched it yet, then this is a perfect show to watch when you got nothing else to do. And it's hilarious. It's made by comedians, so it's going to be funny. And as far as book recommendations go, the book I want to recommend is Green Light by Matthew McConaughey. This book inspired me to read more. And I never thought that I would be interested in autobiography, but the way he starts the book off is perfect. He says, "This isn't trying to teach you anything. It's me sharing the stories of my life." And the way he does it, it inspired me not to only read more, but to live life in a different way. If I had a dream life that I could say I want, it would be modeled after Matthew McConaughey, respect for the people that you idolized as a kid, and setting goals that you can achieve and breaking them down systematically until you achieve those goals, and just diving into life in itself. Most of us live our lives without really appreciating the moment. People sometimes say like, man, 10 years, 4 years flew right by. And it's like, you shouldn't be saying that, because if you're taking your time to smell the roses and appreciate everything around your life and really live life as it should, when it comes to like upholding your values and pursuing your passions and loving and understanding your feelings and stuff like that. That's how Matthew McConaughey modeled his life, and what a life it's been. It took him 10, 100,000 different directions, and each direction, whether it was bad or good, it all made sense at the end. A bad situation at the beginning came with a lesson at the end that made it a good situation. That's why he calls it green lights, because he thinks that green lights mean go, green lights are good, green lights feel good. And red lights are these obstacles that you come in life. So in life, you want more green lights than you do red lights. And sometimes you encounter red lights. And at the end of the day, you learn that this obstacle was put there to teach you a lesson, and then it turns into a green light. So I thought the book was well written. I thought the book has a lot of life lessons and a lot of great quotes. I will probably read it again. And shout out to Matthew McConaughey. All I could say is I will keep living, LIVIN, and no G, because living is a verb, not an adjective. And that was my favorite quote of the book. So if you guys have watched every single show on Netflix or anything on Amazon Prime and you're kind of tired of just staring at a screen, go to your local library or just bookstore. It's 20 bucks and it's a great read and it might change your life. It kind of changed my perspective on how I look at life and how I will be pursuing it as I go. So, it's a very powerful book. Now moving on to Obama's Dreamland and Mark Cuban's How to Win in Business. So I'm excited to read those books. I've read a little bit of Mark Cuban's book, and again, autobiographies seem to be my favorite subject to read. So we'll see what happens. But I'm running out of time. I did say under 30 minutes. So thank you guys for listening. Hopefully, you guys get your vaccines. Hopefully, you guys watch Big Mouth or read the book. And I'll keep you guys updated how I feel about the Conor thing. And thank you guys for all the support. And if you guys made it this far, just remember to like and subscribe. And thank you guys for watching all the way through.